After 3.5 years and running 17 races, taking off time from each race and putting the time and dedication in, what else could be next? A full marathon. My name is Marianne Schrader. I am a high school special education teacher. I volunteer, I tutor, and I am a runner. I first got interested in running when I was very young. My dad and I used to always go down and watch the marathoners run through Southside at my grandmother's house. And that was always fascinating to me. I always wondered, how could somebody run that many miles without stopping? And then about 3.5 years ago, a good friend of mine, Eric, got me interested in running. He decided to run a marathon without ever running a race before. And he trained and he was successful in it. And it was interesting for me to watch his journey and to learn his training program. So ever since then, he has got me interested in running. I've learned throughout the various races that I have run, I've tried to train on my own from programs that I've gotten either from friends or on the internet. And then I have also trained with Fleet Feet. They have a training program that I sign up for. I've done the 10-mile training program with them as well as the half marathon training program. And I have seen the difference between training by myself and training with the group. You start at a base mileage, and like for the half marathon, you had to be able to run 6 miles consecutively. And then you would run during the week about like 4 or 5 miles for your short runs. And then on the weekends, you would build up all the way up to, we did, I believe, 11 miles in preparation for the half marathon. I have actually taken off up to 30 minutes on my previous races from training with them. When I first started training, I would run maybe 3 days a week to train for a race. Where now, through their training program, I'm running between 4 and 5 days a week. They also have speed interval trainings and tempo trainings involved in there. And until I started actually training for my most previous half marathon for the Pittsburgh, I never did speed intervals. And with the speed intervals, I noticed I actually took off about a minute per pace per mile for my time. There's a couple of times where I've done races where instead of treating them more like a race, they're treated more like a training run. There was a race out at North Park. It was called the Spring Thaw. I believe it was in like February. And our training program through Fleet Feet, they had told us to treat it more of like our Sunday long runs. And the Sunday long run is used mainly just to get your legs used to the distance and not working on speed. The speed will come with that naturally. Also, when I did another race at North Park, it was the two-phase 10K. The first part of the 10K was on the road, so I treated that more of a race. But the second part was on a trail, so I use that more just as a training run so I can get more of the distance underway. And also it's more of a rockier trail for me, so I wanted to make sure I could prevent any injury because I was training at that time for a half marathon. For my most recent Pittsburgh half marathon, I realized that diet plays a huge role. During that training, I took it very serious. So when we started in January, it was a 16-week program. I really focused not only on running every training run that was expected of me, but I also really focused on the diet. So that consisted of, I eliminated all kinds of like carbonated beverages. I was not eating sweets, which is very difficult for me because I love sugar. If it was like maybe like my birthday was in February, so I had a piece of cake for that, but there was no, like 1 month before, absolutely no kind of cheating whatsoever. Ate a lot of pasta. I would eat pasta at least twice a week. And then the week of the race, I would carb load, which consisted of pasta like every day as well as rice. And I found that that gave me enough energy for that. On the contrary, I've also had runs where I did not follow the diet as well, and I saw a difference in my running. Like the pace lagged a little bit, I'd had cramps in my side, or my legs didn't feel as well. When I first started running, a lot of times I would just drink Gatorade when I ran, and then as I started to build into longer distances, I started to supplement during my training runs with either chews or like gels and goos to help give me some carbohydrate as well as electrolytes. And then from working with Fleet through the training program, I learned that not a good idea to have Gatorade and the gels at the same time. It's too much sugar. So now what I do is when I'm running, I carry, it's called Goo Brew with me, where it doesn't have the sugars, it's just the pure electrolytes to help replenish that as I run. And then I also hydrate before my run in the morning with noon, so that provides me with extra hydration as well as electrolytes. Hydration is very, very important. You have to drink a lot before you start running, and it's not just the morning of, it's like 2 to 3 days before your race that you have to make sure you're hydrated well. If not, you will feel it on the run. So before I run, I try to do some stretching before, and I also a lot of times will do the same stretches after the run to kind of loosen up my legs a little bit. So some of the exercises or stretches that I do before a run is I want to kind of loosen up my quads. So I'll just hold my leg back, and I'll try to hold it for about 10 seconds on each side, and I'll alternate each side, and I'll do that about like 3 times each side. I'll also do like some kickbacks where I bring my legs back pretty far to try to stretch out my quads some more. And then additionally, I'll do some high kicks. It helps stretch out like my hamstrings before I run. Another thing I like to do is I try to do some lunges. You can either do front lunges or back lunges to help stretch out. So you just want to keep alternating back and forth between the lunges, and that helps stretch out your quads and your hamstrings as well. And then last but not least, I'll do some stretches up against like a wall, where I'll try to stretch out my calves and my Achilles as well. So one thing that's really important when you're training and running a lot is to roll out. So a lot of times I try to roll every day, try to do it for about 20 minutes. And I find the best way to incorporate this into my daily routine is to just keep my rollers by my TV and roll out while I'm watching TV. I like to use this big foam roller a lot, and I'll hit like my quads and my hamstrings and my calves a lot while I'm rolling. There's a bunch of different ways that you can do it, but really all you want to do is put the pressure on your hamstring when you're rolling. And a lot of times, like if I find a spot that's really tight, then I'll just focus on that spot, and you can actually put even more pressure on by putting your other leg on and then hitting that as well. So I'll just keep doing that. It's really amazing, like you can start to feel it working its way out as you roll. And then do the calf. And like I said, with the same way, you can do it like one leg like this, or you can actually cross over to add more tension and get a little bit deeper into the muscle if you wanted to. This is another roller I like to use. This is an additive roller. It's really nice because you can get really deep into the tissue because of the individual parts on the roller versus the other roller is just one big foam roller. So one thing you have to be careful though when you are rolling out on this is that you don't apply too much pressure because it's easy to do. I've actually seen some people bruise their legs from using these, but it's really nice because you can hit other parts of your legs with this roller versus the other one. And then you just want to go and apply some good pressure along the muscle. A lot of times I'll use this for like my IT band when that starts to get really tight, as well as for my quads and my hamstrings. And also sometimes in your gluteus maximus, that gets a little sore, so you want to use that as well. One last rolling that I like to do is use this little green ball. It's a nice, tough, hard ball. And I like to put it underneath my feet. It helps to stretch out my feet a lot of times because they get a lot cramping from doing a long run. So I like to sit there at night and do this. It's actually very relaxing to do. Preparing myself mentally for a race, I just recently realized is a huge factor. Usually leading up to the race, at least the week before, I start getting myself really pumped up and excited for the race and think about the course and what my pace has been and my pace goal for the race. Usually the day of the race, while I'm getting ready, I'll play some motivational music to get me really excited and get my adrenaline going. A couple weeks ago, I had a half marathon that I ran, and I kind of prepared myself differently. I kind of felt like it was going to be a tough race for me because I was having some hydration problems, and I knew that the weather wasn't going to be good, and I felt that that actually was part of the result of me not performing as well. It was almost like I psyched myself up that it was not going to be a good race. So I really learned within the past few weeks how the mental preparation is a huge factor during the race itself. So one thing that I found with the whole running is that it's very challenging at times to balance the running with everything else that I have to do in life. Being a teacher, it is very time consuming, as well as the volunteer work that I do. So what I had to do was when I trained for the Pittsburgh Half Marathon was I had to make that my #1 priority. So that had to come first and foremost before anything else. And I was very thankful that I have a lot of supportive family and friends, that they understood that that was my main priority and that I wanted to do well. Because without their support, it would have been a challenge. So that in itself was the first thing that I had to do. Now I noticed at the beginning of this school year, I was very consumed with paperwork. So running wasn't my first priority, and I put school first, and I noticed the difference. There were days where I should have ran and I did not run. And because of that, then when I had a race, I saw the difference. Like I didn't feel as prepared. So recently I just registered for my first full marathon. And I'm a little nervous going into it. It's the whole what happens between miles 20 and 26. And thinking about what inspired me to run a marathon, it's actually a couple reasons why. The first was it's one of my things on my bucket list to see if I could do. I know physically, if I trained hard enough, that I would be able to do it, but I know it's more of a mental challenge. So I kind of want to do that as more of a mental piece to see if I can push myself to an extreme when my body may be not wanting to go any further. And then also, I've run 4 half marathons now, and for me, running the 13 miles isn't as much of a challenge anymore as it was. It's more about time-based. So now I want to push it to the next level and see if I can challenge myself to complete the 26.2. Best advice I have been given is just to trust the training program that I'm given. The training program will require me to only run 2 20-mile runs. The reason why we don't go past the 20-mile run is because at that point, your body is conditioned. If you continue to go more than the 20, you have a higher risk of injury. So that's why they really recommend that you don't go over the 20-mile run. Over the course of the past 3.5 years, I have done 17 races. I have taken time off of pretty much every single race. From the first half marathon I did to the most recent, I took off a good hour in my time, and that was through a lot of hard work, dedication, and preparation. If I am able to achieve this goal of running a full marathon, my ideal goal that I would like to do one day is to take my dad down to Disney World and run a marathon down at Disney World. I want to be able to celebrate with my family once I cross the finish line. My main goal when I do my first full marathon is to finish the race smiling and standing.